stopping you, Joe, but truthfully, we've a big agenda, and people generally know the macro policies of the Labour Party. We're trying to stay as close as possible to the micro agenda at the heart of the question. Michael Darcy.
Yeah, Kieran spoke about Oliver Bond Flats. Just a couple of weeks ago, the FAI asked some of the Oireachtas members to play a charity soccer match in an anti-racism game in their flats on the all-weather surface. And I was in there it was the week that the kids were off school. My son was there, and he was playing football with all the other kids before our game and after our game. And the only difference between my son and the children there was I was bringing my son home. And what I find sad, more so than anything else, is that we talk about education. There should be much more funding going towards the primary sector in those areas that badly need additional funds. There are kids who end up in those schools who don't get fed in the morning. And what I would like to see is, and this is the opportunity, if we don't make the changes now in certain areas that unions and others will resist, well, they're never going to be made. And I really feel that we should be putting much more funding in, but also I think we should be getting the very best teachers into those schools to try and bring those children on, advance them, give them the opportunity to at least go to secondary school, rather than ending up in the criminal justice system, and by the time they're 14, they're costing a fortune for the state to look after, and then when they're 18, they're in Mountjoy.
Thank you.
Yes, question was in relation to kind of equality, and one of the ways I argued earlier to ensure that is through ensuring that there's proper social and economic rights written into our constitution. And that is one of the ways I think that you can deliver equality. It won't happen overnight. One of the other ways, and we've had some degree of success in the 6 counties in the Assembly, is the equality proofing of legislation. Even though the DUP wouldn't be champions of equality, it is in place. It's not ideal, but it is something that we have demanded here, and the government needs, probably under the equivalence, to look at that. And in terms, and you do the same in terms of poverty proofing legislation, to ensure that all state policy isn't going to increase inequality, which has happened in society over the last 20 years, in an area where we could have addressed the inequalities in society, where there was additional money, inequality grew. We're now in a recession. We still have the opportunity, despite everything, to ensure that state funding, state policy goes to, first and foremost, to ensuring that those who have less in society benefit, if you want, most from the investment that the state is undertaking. And kind of Kieran mentioned Fatima Mansions. A lot of the children who are now in the new apartments and the new build, regenerated Fatima Mansions, go to a school across the road in Basin Lane, which has suffered cuts to its special needs assistance and special classes, special needs classes, and funding for art, creativity, to try and address some of the problems in relation to antisocial behaviour, to use that. And this is quite a minor cost to the state, yet again, what it's by cutting special needs assistance and cutting that special money that's set aside to try and address opportunities or lack of opportunities in these areas, and when you cut that, that has a huge effect in the long term.
I don't know if you read this morning's Irish Times in terms of the attitudes survey in respect of the hardening attitudes amongst young people towards non-Irish / foreign workers, and the perceptions, quote unquote, that they should go home. In some respects, the funding dimension to the equality issue is small relative to the overall scale of budgets, if you look at the budgets that we're taking. I think what is hugely problematic in terms of the signal that's been sent out, in terms of such popular supports where you have insecurities about rising unemployment, is that actually racist perceptions, racist attitudes are okay. And whilst it's great that people are engaging in sport against racism, I think politics of any party, where there is a tolerance for this. So therefore, I think that you can get around the signal, not just by reversing cuts or whatever. It's possible for both the Greens in government, but equally the opposition parties, to take a much more proactive approach that makes clear that the kinds of racism, and I say racism, John, advisedly, because I think in the direction we're going in, there will be a hierarchy. And there will be a hierarchy around discrimination. I believe people with disabilities will fare relatively better in that hierarchy than those who have contributed to this country and made their home in this country. We had a presentation this morning from a mother who talked about not being able to allow her 7-year-old boy out to play in the public playground because of the colour of his skin. Now, I think we need to be much more vigilant. This isn't a sleight of hand that's going on vis-a-vis funds. There is, I think, Kieran, a game being played. And that is a game that's being played that's quite dangerous by the bigger partner, that will be quite happy to orchestrate a situation that makes it impossible for people to stay in partnership. And I think both you and the opposition partners need to be much more vocal and vigilant in saying this kind of populism will not be countenanced from wherever it comes from.
I think that we have seen a subtle race card played by certain parties over the last few years, and I think very strong, clear signals need to come from every party on this issue.
Mike?
Yeah, can I say to Donald, this is no longer subtle and this is no longer a sleight of hand. What I'm experiencing a lot now, but the other public reps can agree with me or not, is in particular from people from the EU 27 countries who are entitled to claim social welfare payments here if they've worked for a particular period of time. That I'm seeing a huge amount of their claims be refused. And their claims are refused on very spurious grounds. And when they're refused, a percentage don't challenge them, don't pursue them, and then they don't get paid, and eventually they say, the hell with that, I'm going home. And I'm seeing a lot of that at the moment.
You're talking about Gorey now? I'm
talking about Wexford, County Wexford. I don't know if that's happening in other constituencies, but when I speak to other public reps, they tell me that they're seeing that also. So this isn't a sleight of hand. This is a decision made somewhere where somebody has said, we're going to shove as many of these out as we can, and off you go back to your own neck of the woods, lads. Now that's what I'm experiencing. And I think it's outrageous, because the Irish, as we know, went to other countries in the past, and they were fortunate enough to be able to claim welfare payments.